Why Schopenhauer said, "Pretend to be dumb and be happy." The Superman lesson. What if I told you the new Superman movie just proved a 200-year-old philosophical theory? And that Clark Kent is literally the perfect embodiment of the most brilliant strategy Arthur Schopenhauer ever created? You probably think I'm stretching it, right? But hold on, because James Gunn didn't just make a superhero movie. He accidentally created the greatest practical philosophy lesson in cinematic history. Clark Kent equals Schopenhauer in action. Superman equals what happens when you show who you really are. Brace yourself, because you'll never see Superman the same way again. The brutal discovery. Why Clark Kent is smarter than Superman. Think with me, why does Clark Kent pretend to be clumsy and mediocre? Most people think it's just a disguise to protect his secret identity. Wrong. It's pure Schopenhauerian wisdom. Schopenhauer discovered that intelligent people tend to be unhappier because they notice more problems, anticipate more tragedies, suffer from things that haven't even happened, become targets of envy and exploitation. Clark Kent figured this out instinctively. As Superman, everyone expects him to save the world 24/7. Infinite pressure. As Clark, no one expects anything. Peaceful life. In the new movie, this duality is crystal clear. Superman suffers under the weight of expectations. Clark chills with a coffee at the Daily Planet. Schopenhauer would say, Clark Kent is the wisest man in comic books. The social trap. How being Superman makes you a target. Here's where the new movie fully proves Schopenhauer. Every time Superman shows up in public, what happens? The government tries to control him. The media criticizes him. Villains attack him. People constantly demand things from him. He becomes humanity's babysitter. Schopenhauer predicted this. Showing intelligence in society is like painting a target on your forehead. Superman literally paints a giant S on his chest. The result? He's a permanent target. Clark Kent? People barely notice him. Devastating example from the movie. Superman saves a child headline. Superman fails to save cat from tree. Clark Kent makes perfect coffee. Nobody cares. Who lives better? Schopenhauer had the answer 200 years before James Gunn. The disguise strategy. How Clark Kent masters the Daily Planet. Now for the movie's most genius part. Clark Kent isn't just Superman in disguise. He's Schopenhauer in action. Watch how he operates. Never corrects people in public. Instead of, "You're wrong about Superman," he says, "Interesting point. Have you considered that?" Asks questions instead of giving answers. Instead of, "I know exactly what happened," he asks, "What do you think really happened?" Lets others shine. Perry White thinks he had brilliant ideas that Clark subtly planted. Uses simple language. No complicated vocabulary. Everyone understands. The result? Clark influences the entire newsroom without making enemies. Schopenhauer called this practical wisdom. James Gunn called it character development. Same thing. Mass psychology. Why Metropolis loves Superman but hates Clark. Now the movie turns into a sociology class. Why does Metropolis love Superman but ignore Clark? Schopenhauer explained, the masses hate real intelligence but love spectacle. Superman equals spectacle. Flies, wears a cape, saves people dramatically. Clark equals real intelligence. Investigates, thinks, solves real problems. The result? Superman gets headlines. Clark gets a Pulitzer. Who has the real impact? Clark Kent as a journalist changes more lives than Superman as a hero. But no one notices. Exactly as Schopenhauer predicted. In the movie, there's a perfect scene. Superman saves a building, applause. Clark writes an article exposing corruption. No one cares. But the article saves 1,000 families. Schopenhauer would say, Clark Kent is the true hero. The R is strategic ignorance. How Clark leads without showing power. Here comes the movie's most subtle part. Clark doesn't just hide his powers. He hides his superintelligence. Genius example. Newsroom meeting. Everyone's debating how to investigate Lex Luthor. Clark doesn't say, I know exactly what to do. He asks, what if we started with his financial records? Perry White, brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Clark plants the idea. Perry thinks it's his. Result? The investigation happens. Clark doesn't become a target. Schopenhauer called it invisible influence, more powerful than any superpower. Because when no one knows you're smart, you can manipulate any situation. Clark literally controls all of Metropolis while pretending to be a mediocre reporter. Genius. The wisdom paradox. The less Clark shows, the more power he has. This is where the movie completely proves Schopenhauer. Most important scene. Superman tries to convince the government to trust him. Result? Total suspicion. Clark Kent chats with the same politician over coffee. Result? Full trust. Why? Superman is threatening because he's powerful. Clark is reassuring because he seems harmless. Schopenhauer explained, the wise man can play the fool, but the fool cannot play the wise man. Clark can pretend to be average. Lex Luthor can't pretend to be humble. Result? Clark always wins. Even when he loses as Superman. In the movie, it's obvious. Superman loses a public battle, negative headlines. Clark earns private trust, total access. Schopenhauer would say, Clark Kent is a perfect strategist. Supreme freedom. Why Clark Kent lies better than Superman. Now, the most liberating part of the movie. Superman can't have normal relationships, relax for even a second, ever be selfish, have privacy, make mistakes without consequences. Clark Kent can date Lois normally, enjoy a quiet coffee, have personal moments, full privacy, make mistakes without drama. Who is more free? Schopenhauer summarized, true happiness is private. Clark understood that. That's why he protects the Clark Kent identity more than the Superman one. Superman is work. Clark is life. In the movie, there's a perfect scene. Superman saves the world, comes home exhausted. Clark makes dinner for Lois, smiles genuinely. Where is he truly happy? Schopenhauer already knew the truth that will change your life. You don't have to be Superman. Here's the truth. James Gunn accidentally proved Schopenhauer right. You don't have to show all your power. You don't have to be seen as a genius. You don't have to save everyone. You can be Clark Kent. Pretend to be average in public. Be brilliant in private. Influence without threatening. Solve problems without making enemies. Live well without drama. Schopenhauer concluded, a man can do what he wants, but he cannot will what he wants. Translation, you can choose to be Clark Kent, but you can't choose not to want to be Superman. So consciously choose Clark's peace over Superman's pressure. As the new movie shows, Clark Kent is the real hero. Superman is just a job. So, are you still trying to be Superman for everyone? Or will you be as smart as Clark Kent? The choice is yours, as it's always been. Thank you, James Gunn, for proving Schopenhauer without knowing it.